Hi, my name is Maverick Evans, and today for the Fall Book Club, we're going to be talking about True Grit by Charles Portis. So for a long time, I had been wanting to get into Westerns. My grandfather has been a huge fan of Westerns for pretty much ever. I've always seen all of his Western paperbacks just everywhere, and he would just read them constantly. I thought to myself one day, well, I haven't ever I haven't read any Westerns, and so I kind of wanted to give them a try. My wife and I, a little bit ago, we watched True Grit, the 2013 movie. So I was like, wow, I liked it so much that I decided to buy the book and give it a whirl. Hopefully, I'll be able to watch the 1969 version of the movie, the original movie, and get a big feel for it. I personally really like Jeff Bridges as Rooster Cogburn, but we'll save that for the movie versus book comparison when we do that, which will be another video. So the original movie was released in 1969, and Charles Portis got this book published in 1968, just 1 year before. So it's set in the late 1800s, maybe 1870, 1880, something like that. We follow this narrator by the name of Maddie Ross, and she tells the entire story. It's kind of set up like she's telling someone, or she is writing a memoir directly to you, the reader. And she tells the story in a first-person manner, relatively reliable, it seems like. Her father has been killed by one of his workers, and his money's been stolen, his horse has been stolen, and so Maddie Ross, a very responsible and mature 14-year-old, decides to take it upon herself to try and rectify the injustice that was done to her father and her family by hiring a bounty hunter and killing the man who killed her father. And so she sets out to do this. She ends up finding a man by the name of Rooster Cogburn, and he is the man who has true grit, which is where the title comes from. So when you read it in the book, you're like, oh, wow, they said True Grit. That's the title of the book. And so they go and try and find them. A Texas Ranger by the name of LaBeef accompanies them at some point, assisting in the search for this man. And he's wanted for he killed a governor, I believe, or something like that, or maybe it was a judge. I think it was a governor. And so he's wanted by multiple people in multiple states. And so they try and go get the guy. And it's a really, my wife didn't like the story very much. I don't really know why. Maybe because it's really dry. Like, that's maybe one thing that I definitely want to talk about is the language. The language is like really interesting to me because I do have done a lot of acting in the past, and as an actor, sometimes you get certain kinds of language in the dialogue that seems really difficult to pull off, given your own dialect and your own way of phrasing things casually. And one thing that I've always found kind of awkward in dialogue, trying to read it or imagine how it would be phrased or delivered, is the lack of contractions. So in True Grit, it's not like there aren't any contractions, but there are far less than usual, which usually I would think is kind of offsetting. And I think at first it was kind of off-putting to try and imagine how it would be said by the characters. The 2013 movie did a great job of that and kind of gave me an idea about how these would roll off the tongue. So, for example, there are a distinct lack of contractions in very important pieces of dialogue. And so if a character is going to make a point that's more pronounced than previous other dialogues, then it is more prone, it seems, that Charles Portis would leave out the contractions. He would have them pronounce every word distinctly from one another, and it kind of makes the sentence punch a little harder. It seems to ring out more clear. And I think that was a really great stylistic choice, if it was, and it seems like it would be because it's fairly consistent, that Charles Portis made, and I just love it. I really adore that style of speaking. And what's interesting is that you would think, at least for Maddie Ross, that the lack of contractions does come off as a more highbrow, more educated, more astute way of speaking. She is educated, well-read, and well-spoken. But even for someone who, like Rooster Cogburn, who has very little, maybe less education, is still well-spoken his own way, he still uses these grammatically incorrect phrases intermingled with phrases that are noticeably lacking contractions, which makes them kind of like mixed and odd. You would think that it just it's very interesting, the way of speaking. And maybe I'm just very unfamiliar with this time period's and region's general way of talking and the way that sentences were usually structured in speech. Or maybe this is a highly synthetic way of speaking. Maybe this is like Shakespeare in the way that hardly anyone would ever speak this way. I don't know. But in any case, it was very entertaining. It was delightful for me to see and to read, and it was just very, very good, in my opinion. I liked it a lot. As far as like Westerns go, it was really interesting that the main character was this little 14-year-old girl, and she's able to handle herself. She barters with grown men, haggling them down to prices that are ridiculous, and she stands up for herself in pretty much every situation. She's highly disagreeable and highly articulate. It's just really interesting following this atypical character throughout a typical, usually like hyper male situation. So, usually like if you watch a spaghetti western with Clint Eastwood, well, obviously he's the main character and focal point of the story, whereas now Maddie Ross is the focal point, and it seems kind of new and fresh. And again, maybe I'm not privy to all of the usual, main characters of a Western story, but it seemed to me kind of weird. I haven't watched a lot of movies or Westerns or read any books that have this kind of protagonist, and it was refreshing. I think it was done very well, and was something new that I hadn't experienced before, and it was good. So anyway, I loved the book, and it was just a really grand read. So I hope to maybe read some more Westerns in the future. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments below, and hopefully we'll be able to get around to a few more of these in the future. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.